Well, I thought I'd do a follow-up video with some not new information, just confirmation that it works. The prior 3 episodes I think I did, or videos, were on the topic of using iodine on my toenails. And then I think maybe around the 3rd video I started to get into a new area of the body that I was using the iodine on, and that was the penis. And I may have already related to you that I burnt my penis inside the urethral opening about a centimeter in from the tip. Now I'm tightly circumcised, so I don't have a foreskin, and I had painted initially the whole head of the penis, the glands, and down, extending beyond the corona, just under the corona to the scar line, and a little bit of the shaft, the skin shaft of the penis, but mostly not. And then I went across, I noticed that the frenulum, or where the frenulum used to be before I was circumcised, the frenulum was dry. I hadn't painted it with the iodine. I was using 2%. Not 7% in an alcohol base, but 2% in a water base, tincture of iodine. And so I noticed the area where the frenulum used to be, I had missed, and the urethral opening, you know, where the pee comes out. And I didn't know how sensitive I forgot how sensitive the urethral pathway is. I've had prior experience there, hurting it, doing other experiments on my body, on my penis, but I guess I forgot. So when I stroked the applicator of the tincture bottle across the urethral opening, I got a pretty hefty sting because I was using 2%, full strength 2%. It stung like hell, and it burnt the flesh. It burnt the whole penis. You know, talk about keratinization of the head. I kind of splurged there in the keratinization process. And only recently, I think yesterday, I was able to rub off the last layers of dead skin from the scar line underneath the corona that was still attached there. Anywho, for several days, the urethral opening would stick shut, and I had to massage or squeeze, gently pinch, and roll the tip of the penis to unstick it. Because if I didn't, and I just would, go and pee, pressure would build up behind the stuck shut condition, and when it would release, it would have a ripping effect. Like ripping a Band-Aid off. It would sting like crazy, and this went on for days. So rolling it open first helped a lot to avoid the extreme pain. Instead, I just got a dull pain in the opening process because there was no pressure involved and no sudden rip. It was gentler this way. Anywho, what I ascertained and thinking it over was that I was using too strong a solution of nascent, or diatomic if you prefer, iodine. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go find me an empty eyedropper bottle, and I did. Or I emptied out what was in it already and rinsed it out and dried it, and it didn't dry, so then I rinsed it out with distilled water and then let that dry, and then I filled it, or I didn't let it dry because I had it rinsed out with distilled water anyway, and then I filled it with 1 drop of, I went in my stockpile of various iodine solutions because I had experimented several years ago when I was living up in the state of Washington with various solutions of iodine, some with DMSO, some with MSM, and so I selected one that had MSM dissolved into the iodine mixture because I thought that would help with the pain, inflammatory pain, irritation, because iodine is irritating to sensitive areas. So I thought the MSM would help. So I took a drop. That was in an eyedropper bottle because an applicator, you can't really dispense. You can touch it to skin, right? But you can't drop a drop from an applicator. You have to stroke it or rub it across a skin area or surface, across a surface. So that's why I was looking for an eyedropper bottle that already had the iodine in it, and I did, and it had MSM in it already, and that was even better. So I dispensed 1 drop of that iodine, 2% water-based iodine with MSM into my empty eyedropper bottle, and then I filled it up. I think it's a 2-ounce size. So I filled it up with 2 ounces of distilled water, shook it up, cleaned out, squirted and sucked the eyedropper to rinse out that, or mix that portion with the rest of the portion so it's all evened out, more or less. And then I waited. I waited for the urethral opening in my penis to fully heal, and when the pain was just about totally gone, and also all this time I was also not painting my toenails. I was so disgusted with the iodine, so I didn't want to deal with it at all. But once I started to paint my toenails, I realized, okay, now's the time. And now I do a double or triple painting on my toenails with the 7% in the alcohol base, because I really want it to be good and brown. And thus I don't have to do it every day. I can skip a day or two, because it takes a while for it to fade when I make it that strong. But that's the 7% in an alcohol base I use on my toenails, because my feet are so asleep with fungus resident within the whole length of my leg up to my pelvic region that my feet don't even notice what's happening to them. Maybe if I get it on the skin where the skin of the toe, the top of the toe where the toenail comes out, where the nail comes out, seems to be a little sensitive there. So I try not to get that skin painted. I do the nail, and then I do the front edge underneath the nail, and then the sides. That seems to work pretty good because it's not sensitive. The skin isn't sensitive there. Anyway, so I did my toenails, and I decided, okay, time to do my penis. So I did. I wetted the whole head of the penis and the shaft, and then I jerked off. I'm sorry to admit it, It's like I got carried away, but I realized I didn't have to do it that way. I thought I had to rub it in, and oh, well, you rub it in, you're jerking off, right? And then I didn't go all the way at first. I went and rested, and, I thought, okay. As I went back and finished the job. But I didn't use any oil. Actually, I went to a pillow. My penis had dried off at that point, and I used 2 pillows, so I didn't, because I had made my poor penis red. I mean, it's like, without a foreskin, it's pretty hard not to abuse. See, this is where masturbation really means self-abuse, when you don't have a foreskin. It can hardly be called self-abuse if you have a foreskin. So it's the fact after the act of circumcision that causes masturbation to be self-abusive, because with a foreskin it would not be self-abusive. But I have to admit, nudity is mildly self-abusive, but it is tolerable because it's so mild. You don't even once you get used to it, you don't even notice that it's a mild form of self-abuse. And I say it is still self-abuse even though it's mild, because you're not conserving your life force. You're exposing yourself, right? Even though you're exposing yourself to yourself, still you are exposing yourself, and nonetheless, and all the same, that means you're not conserving your life force, because the whole point of wearing clothing from your neck down to your ankles to your wrists is to conserve your life force, your aura. And I don't like to do that in the summertime, because I've been a nudist since the age of 14, so I'm not going to stop now. And the whole point is to lessen the other form of self-abuse, namely masturbation. Because I wasn't born with a whole lot of vitality. That's a congenital defect. I can rack it up to an alcoholic mother. She didn't know she was an alcoholic. She was fasting on a raw food vegan diet. So she didn't know she was an alcoholic, but my brother was a head shorter than his cousin, 3 weeks difference in age. He doesn't know that he was an alcoholic. And our father was now not an alcoholic because he smoked a pipe. And that continued to stimulate his metabolism so that the low-grade alcohol in our diet would not affect him at all. So he was clueless when my mother left him. He was clueless when she started eating cooked food again in order to give birth to me, because I had miscarried the pregnancy before my birth, because she was an alcoholic while fasting on a raw food vegan diet. That was a terrible combination. I have to bring this up because you need to know where I'm coming from. So I don't have a whole lot of vitality, But that's not genetic, it's congenital. Nothing, and to compensate, I have a beautiful brain. I'm very smart, but very weak. Pathetic, 99-pound weakling style pathetic, in which I don't like to fight people. I don't like the competition, and I cringe. I scare myself. If I fight somebody afterwards, I just go into implode. I implode on myself because I can't stand what I've just done to somebody else. It's very disturbing. I have to be careful what movies I watch, because I can really get into it and start feeling like I'm suffering along with the actors on the screen. It's kind of like Maddie in the movie Splash. Daryl Hannah is playing the role of Maddie, the dolphin turned mermaid, because that's really what mermaids are. They're just dolphins, which we are beginning to recognize, at least in the form of fantasy, that they're human, but otherwise we don't recognize they're human. Like in that movie Splash, they keep calling her a fish. Well, in the beginning anyway, Tom Hanks calls her a fish. I'm in love with a fish. By the end of the movie, he's correcting other people who are misnaming her a fish. Anywho, so I have this weakness, so I realize the value of clothing is to conserve the life force, because you're not giving attention to the body. You're ignoring it. And the whole point of nudists is we don't ignore the body, right? We constantly reminding ourselves we have a body. And, Arnold Ehret, who wrote Mucusless Diet Healing System and the other book, Rational Fasting, he said, sometimes people have to be reminded, you do have a body, And to those of us who are not enlightened, we do, and I like to remind myself I have a body, despite the fact that I could forget I have a body and go get enlightened and then really forget because I'll be swimming in bliss. Well, I like to remind myself I have a body. I don't like to forget it. Because I'm hesitant whether or not I really want to become immortal, because then I know this will be the last lifespan. Just like suicide, it'll be non-reversible, and I'm going to miss all the drama. Oh, I'm pathetic. Anywho, so I like to hold back. And I like to be 100% sure that I really am sincere about this enlightenment business. So I don't mind being a nudist. I don't mind, despite my lack of vitality, on top of which I go ahead and become a nudist at the age of 14. Go figure. So I like to hold back my evolution, my spiritual evolutionary development. And by being as physical as my lack of vitality will allow me to be. I was very sickly as a child, trust me. I wasn't born with all my physical ores in the water. So I have to do a lot of different practices to keep me healthy. Vitamins, digestive aids, and now due to the antifreeze poisoning 15 years ago, I can't be a vegan anymore because I don't digest starch very well. So, I have to do a lot of different things, but I can't eat fish because it's gross. But I do take fish oil capsules of vitamin A, not the EFA. That's a waste of time. Just because you already get that with fish oil anyway. But just vitamin A fish oil capsules and lanolin vitamin D capsules. And I also have vitamin A non-fish oil, just straight vitamin A by itself. Very high dosage because my liver needs lots of vitamin A. So I take about 75,000 international units of vitamin A a day, in addition to which I use the cod liver oil fish oil vitamin A, which is a low dosage of vitamin A, to simply give me a refined version of fish in my diet so that I can be grounded. And I also eat yogurt, and I have egg pasta because I eat so little eggs, I don't digest them very well. That's the only way for me to get eggs into my diet and not have eggs spoil on me. So I managed to eat a spread eagle diet. I'm lying on my belly with my legs slightly spread eagle, so the term came to mind. But my penis is pointing down, not up, because I'm not trying to masturbate. I'm lying on my grounding sheet on my earthing beds, so I'm grounded to the earth and electrically connected to the earth, And I'm making this video in the nude because it's summertime, right? It's June already, I think. Yeah, June. And it's nice and warm. In fact, it gets very warm. Anywho, so the hot topic here is what I do to my penis every morning now. I use the dilute. It's 2% divided by, or times, 1 part in 1,000, because that's about how many drops there are in a 2-ounce jar eyedropper bottle. If you figure 20 drops per quarter teaspoon, 4 quarter teaspoons to a teaspoon, that's 4 times 20, that's 80. And then 3 teaspoons to a tablespoon, that's 3 times 80 is 240. And 2 tablespoons to an ounce, that's 2 times 240 is 480. And you guessed it, 2 times 1 ounce becomes 2 ounces, is just under 1,000. 480 times 2 is 960. So it's roughly 1,000 dilution. So 1,000 into what's already 2 parts or 20 parts per 1,000 becomes 20 parts per million. So I've got 20 parts per million, 20 ppm of iodine, nascent iodine, that I apply to my urethra, and it stinks. But you know, it's mild, it's gone, it's over with, and it did its job, which is entirely, as far as I'm concerned, psychological for the most part. Now, if it has a long-term benefit of stimulating the spontaneous regeneration of a foreskin, so be it. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. But that'll be for 10 years from now down the road, you know, when I'm old and ready to pop into the grave, for me to find out. In the meantime, though, I am getting a psychological benefit, so I consider it an austerity. In the Sanskrit, it's called tapas. Tapas literally means to get heat, because it's intended to enliven the kundalini. Now, I didn't notice any kundalini being enlivened because I woke up pretty groggy this morning. I had to take a long walk to try to wake up. But when the iodine was stronger, it did. So it has the potential for awakening the kundalini if it had been any stronger, but it was so mild it did not. And that's good, because I can live with it. It doesn't do any tissue damage that I noticed, although it did, my urethral opening did get stuck in the middle of the night when I was sleeping. And that happens anyway, from time to time. And I don't know why. It just happens. So it can be pretty severe sometimes and really shock me in the middle of the night when I'm half asleep sitting on the toilet peeing. I don't stand to pee most of the time. I sit down. Hey, at my age, lying down is even better, but I can't pee lying down, so, you know. Because, see, antifreeze poisoning ages the physiology, and usually it kills you. That's how quickly it ages you. But in my case, because I know a thing or two about studying the matter, I've managed to stay alive. All my cats are dead, because they were poisoned along with me. All 4 of them. They didn't last more than 2 years. The first one went in 1 month. She had liver cancer. Anywho, so somebody gave me a figure and told me, he was a healer, a psychic healer, and he told me the figure that my body was 10 years older than my chronological age. Now, up until the poisoning, my biological age was 5 years younger than my chronological age due to meditation and fasting and veganism. But here I aged 10 years according to him, which means I aged 15. So it was pretty upsetting to watch my body deteriorate so rapidly. In the beginning it was worse. I was dying. But I got over it. You know, I did apricot pits, and then I did liquid cesium chloride. I did all kinds of things. And now I do things that are mild and convenient and cost-effective and are not severe. I mean, I keep cesium chloride on hand, and I do take it once in a while because I do need the boost, but only a drop, and it's totally saturated with MSM. So I rarely have to use it, and that's good because it is hard to get rid of. It stays in the body for months and upsets the potassium balance in the bloodstream. But I don't use apricot pits because that only works for me on a raw food diet. On a cooked food diet, I have so much candida, it results in self-poisoning. It's a waste of time. So all these people saying, oh, be moderate with apricot pits, that's a bunch of booey. The only reason that we have to be moderate is because we're loaded with candida. And there's several ways around that. You know, you can live with, like the Hunzas, up at 25,000 feet in the Himalayas, in which they have no windows, you know. It's just an opening in their hut. So all that icy cold air comes in while they sleep at night, and they're warm and snuggled in bed with their honey, but they're breathing freezing cold air at 25,000 feet. So you're not going to have any candida in your body to give you any trouble. But on top of that, their diet is mostly semi-raw. They have very little firewood up there, and so they don't eat a whole lot of cooked food. About the only food they cook is the bread, and it's not even wheat. They can't even grow wheat. They make some kind of chapati or whatever you could call it out of buckwheat and millet, you know, the grains that can tolerate living, growing up at that altitude. They have a lot of dairy products. They have no eggs, no chickens, and the only meat they have is on a rare occasion in small quantity, because I think they're probably limited to goats. You know, they probably keep some goats. I don't know, but they eat very little meat, a lot of dairy, and they may get fish from the streams down below, because down at 20,000 feet at the bottom of the gorge that they live up at the top of, they could probably get some fish, I suppose. I don't know. But they get glacial water, you know, they drink glacial water, and so they don't have any reason to have candida in their body, so they can get away with eating raw apricot pits, 3 dozen an hour after lunch each day, you know. Us Westerners, we're so disgustingly deprecated that we can't get away with using apricot pits unless we're on a 100% raw food vegan diet, and then we can do it. Or breathe icy cold air every night while we sleep. You know, trust me, apricot pits is a very narrow window in which not everybody can handle this stuff because they're loaded with candida to begin with, on top of the whatever cancer they're trying to deal with. So it's not an easy protocol to follow. But with also olives don't grow at that altitude. So although they're the remnant of Alexander of Macedonia's army, as they retreated from India, they took their food along with them as they marched across the planet. But olives don't grow at that altitude, so that's another thing from their cherished homeland of Macedonia that they couldn't grow it and have in their diet. But they had something else. They still had apricots, so they grew apricots and eat a lot of dried apricots during the year. Anywho, so where was I? So every morning now, I started this morning and I put 1 drop of the 20 parts per million iodine, water-based iodine solution, tincture of iodine, into my urethral opening. I pinched it open with my 2 fingers of one hand and used my other hand to hold the eyedropper and carefully drop 1 drop into there. And it stung. And then I closed it, open, closed it, open, closed it, and then I patted it dry with a little toilet paper because I didn't want to suffer too much. And it didn't, wake me up. I still had to take a long walk to wake me up because I'd been up till 3 in the morning last night. I got about 4 hours of sleep because I've been really buzzing, working on my free energy presentations, and somebody bought one of them that I had recently put up that I'm upgrading because I can only, I use PayHip as an alternative to Amazon because PayHip doesn't give me any trouble. They don't review anything. You put it up, it's there immediately for sale. So I charge less at payhip.com than I do at Amazon for my free energy presentations, because it's such a novelty not to have to work so hard. Amazon, everything goes through review, and boy, if it doesn't pass the muster, it doesn't get posted, doesn't get published. So it's given me no end of frustration with Amazon, but they do distribute. I've had more sales through Amazon certainly than through PayHip. PayHip I have to hand hold. It has to be people I already know. It can't be a stranger, Amazon, though, I have sold through to strangers across the planet because the distribution through Amazon is much better. But that's the problem. You have to go through review with everything. So I did a video yesterday or the day before yesterday. I can't remember which day it was. It might have been the day before yesterday. I think it was the day before. Yeah, because I've been working on upgrading it. It was the day before yesterday, and so that I can only distribute it through the UK because they don't care what shape it's in. But for the American audience, the American marketplace section of Amazon, they're very particular. So they want me to do captions for the hearing impaired, or maybe they don't want to turn on the sound and they just want to read the text. So, oh God. So it's a 50-minute long video. I got to redo I posted it privately on YouTube so that nobody can see it, and then I waited for YouTube to process the video thoroughly to create the closed captioning, and then I downloaded the closed captioning, and now I'm editing it and applying it. I'm only up to around the minute 8, and it's slightly over 50 minutes long, so I got a ways to go. It's a lot of work, a lot of secretarial, boring work, which I'm taking a break from. But it'll be rewarding because then it'll make it possible for me to publish this video in the States, in the United States, and have a better chance for sale. And that's really the target audience because we're the ones who are ignorant. Everybody else across the planet is not, by comparison. But the media and the educational system and the just plain common sense is common ignorance. I mean, trust me, Americans are downright ignorant. You got to get your news from outside the states if you want to get any news that the media doesn't want to show. So we tend to be ignorant, and we're fostering notions in physics. We misapply the laws of physics in order to win an argument. We claim it's physics, but we're misrepresenting physics when we do so, because physics, it's atrociously misrepresented to argue the case that you cannot have more energy coming out of a circuit than what goes into it. And of course, nobody wants to admit that they're liars. And the easiest example, which again they don't want to include in their argument, they laugh if you include this. Oh, well, that doesn't count. Oh, it counts all right. And the example I'm thinking of are heat pumps. Heat pumps take a very small amount of energy that we have to pay for, and they use that to move a much larger quantity of energy that you get for free from the sun on a nice sunny day. But my free energy devices are so efficient, you don't need to have the solar panel out in the sunshine of full sunlight. You can have it indoors or outside on a cloudy day, and for that matter, I have to throw away the voltage because too much will kill the circuit for small appliances, not for electric vehicles. So I have to throw away most of the voltage as it is. So under those circumstances, I can see why Tesla put an aerial on his car. Not because he was getting any substantial amount of power from it. He was just getting a little bit, a few microvolts. But that's all you need when you know what you're doing. When you don't let the mind virus, as Eric Dollard calls it, or the programming, or the brainwashing, as I like to call it, that is so commonsensical these days against anybody who comes up with a free energy device. Oh, it's a con artist, it's a scam, it's foolishness, it's nonsense. Yeah, right, whatever. So this is what I put up with. And see, my first endeavor in the free energy department was nudity, because I know it's something that most people can relate to. Maybe not in the best of way, but they can relate to it. But with free energy, either the person is clueless, or they think they already know about it and they shut down and shut you out of the forum that you want to enter. They boot you out and they don't let you come back, or at least they don't let you post. So many forums I've been booted out of because I scare people, or I turn people off. Either way, oh, it's hurting my ears, literally, I mean, I think that was somebody's complaint. It was, yeah, I think he said that. It hurt his ears. Can you imagine that? That's what my grandmother would say when I was naked in front of her. She was legally blind, but she could still make out fuzziness, and so she could tell I was naked, and she said, please, can you put some clothes on? You're making me feel chilled. And it's like, how can I make you feel chilled? You're fully dressed. And I'm happy as a duckling that I'm naked in front of my grandma, because, that's what nudists like to do. They like to show off. Some of us, we're a bit of an exhibitionist, and we're trying to show off that we're free, of inhibitions and fears and shame, needless shame. So, it's funny that she would use that excuse, because she's lying. She's not telling the truth. She's not cold. She's embarrassed, which is not the same thing. Anywho, so what I've learned is I'm a prick. And I know this, but especially as a vegan, it's even harder not to be a prick. In other words, it's easier to be a prick when you're a vegan. And this is what non-vegans complain to me about. Oh, I hate those vegans. They're such a prick. They're so pushy. They got to push their agenda on everyone else. It's so inappropriate, They don't like us, Well, they don't like nudists either, and they don't like people who promotes free energy. So I'm doing 3 things right there that are not kosher. And top it off, I'm a meditator. Well, now meditation is not that bad, but my brother doesn't like it. He thinks it's hooey. So that's 4 categories I cover that makes me an enemy of the people, It's like, oh God, whatever. Now you see why I call myself an activist, because what I take for granted, somebody else would call me a prick. Or if you want to say it in a nice way, I'm an activist, instead of using the prick word. Be that as it may, before I lose my voice entirely. So to deal with the fact that I live among ignorant people who would prefer to call me names, I can call them ignorant, but so what? That doesn't solve anything. So to try to compromise and bridge the gulf that lies between us, I now perform an austerity every morning, starting with today, in which I burn my urethral opening to remind myself of how I look to other people. Okay? Because if I don't, I'm going to lose the breadth of my perspective. It's also why I like to take fish oil, is to kind of ground me in the perspective of other people, because other people are not vegans for the most part. They eat animal foods. And I like yogurt, but it doesn't have to be dairy yogurt. I just plain like the yogurt culture. It's good to eat. But to help me bridge the gulf, I eat animal products to the extent that I can. But it's not enough. I'm still a nudist and all these other things, and so I give myself a dose of pain to remind me that I'm a prick, to remind me that it's good to back away a little bit and ease up and try to go easy with people, because no matter what people's level of consciousness, and I mean that in the best of sense, from the high to the low and everything in between, if you did not grow up as a nudist from childhood, it's not going to be easy for you. I know this for a fact. Yet I tend to ignore that fact because I live alone, And I know very few people, and the few that I know, some of them just don't like being around me. They don't like their family knowing that I'm a nudist, They're ashamed, they're angry. More often than not, they're angry. Free energy, it's pretty hard to get angry with somebody who promotes it. Disgusted, maybe, annoyed, perhaps, but not angry. But with nudity, it's a different response. And so it's something that most people can relate to, and that's why people get angry over nudity, as opposed to scratching their heads or just turning aside and forgetting about it. And that's why I did it for so long, because I knew I could reach people. But it is a version of free energy. It's a different version. It took years for me to find out an analog, a role model, somebody I can point to say, oh, I'm like that person. Wilhelm Reich, who promoted orgone, energy, and the like, he said we were sexually repressed. Well, he didn't mean we got to jerk off all the time or become hedonists. What he meant was we are emotionally suppressed. We are sensually suppressed, because there's a lot of aspects to our emotions that we repress ourselves that has nothing to do with the sexual act, although the sexual act has everything to do with our self-repression. So our sexual repression is a subset of a much larger, more serious self-repression that encompasses our sexual repression, but also encompasses our emotional suppression, and our sensuality is also self-suppressed. It's not considered decent to be sensual in public, right? Oohing and eyeing. Well, when I sit down and eat a meal and it really rubs me the right way, I want to ooh and ah, and my ex-girlfriend would get a tickle of a laughter out of me oohing and eyeing and acting like I was having an orgasm. I was just eating a meal, because it felt so good. It tasted so sumptuous, as Charlie would use the word sumptuous. And that's really what the city program is for the TMers. It's to add sumptuousness to their program. But it is so refined, done at such a refined level of awareness, that, and the state of the metabolism, that it's not at all physical. So it doesn't mean that they'll be into the physical variety like us nudists are. Anywho, so this is why I do this. It's for psychological reasons, it's for sociological reasons, it's for clemency or peace. I'm trying to make the peace and keep the peace in a mild way, to remind myself that there is a slight war going on, a slight discrepancy of opinion between one person and the next. Some people enjoy nudity, some people don't, and some people couldn't care less one way or the other, and everything in between, all different varieties of those three major categories. So that's why I do this, is for because that's the only benefit I can admit to, is the psychological benefit. I don't know if it's going to stimulate regeneration of the penis. I have reason to believe it might, because the urethra grew at the same time that the foreskin developed during our third trimester when we were in our mother's tummy. And because of that, I always felt intuitively that the tip of the urethral opening, the very opening itself of the urethral pathway that goes up to the bladder, and then, the bladder goes up to the kidneys, I felt that the stimulus of the opening of the urethra might have something to do with the regeneration, the spontaneous regeneration of the foreskin. So I've tried, tugging. I've done that already, and I don't do it anymore because I was impatient. I did a certain amount of injury, but I did manage to do a certain amount of stimulation, so that now when my penis is fully erect, the shaft skin is not taut. It's not tight, and that's not exactly comfortable. That's why they did it to us, to discourage us from wanting to have sex, at least too often. Certainly not masturbatory variety. So I managed to loosen that up, and that was a relief. So when my penis shrinks turtle size, when when it gets really small, I actually have a little bit of an overhang. Tiny, tiny overhang, but only when the penis pulls in. Never used to do that. So I consider that a small measure of success, using the conventional methodology to creating a fox foreskin, a fake foreskin, just getting the shaft skin to grow and flop over the corona. But once I read Becker's book, Dr. Robert Otto Becker, MD, The Body Electric, I got a different perspective. Regeneration is possible, but how do you go about it? So, I'm not a surgeon like he was, so I can't do that. I can't use his approach. So I've tried my own, and it didn't work because it deformed my penis. So I gave up. Now this, because it does so little damage to the tissue structure of the urethral opening, I can live with it, and it won't deform it, yet pain is involved in the regenerative process according to the protocol that Dr. Robert Otto Becker laid out for us, if we should choose to follow his protocol in one way or another. Pain is involved, because the problem is, see, what we don't know, here's a little hint. So this is a vinyasi truth. You won't hear this from somebody else. The conscious brain, the conscious mind, is located in the brain. Everything else across the entire physiology is the subconscious mind, what we call the body. So this is why we say body and mind are one. It's not just a mantra, it's a truth, but that is an oversimplification. I gave you the more discrete variety, in which the conscious mind is the brain, and the unconscious or subconscious mind is everything else within the physiology. So when the soul undertakes extraction of memory from the body at the time of death, the day of judgment, 3.5 days in which the soul goes through the extraction process, it has to extract all the memory from all of the body, not just the brain, because all of the body has participated in the memory process of all of our life experiences. Yet, we're not aware of it. Why? Because the rest of the body is our unconscious. And if we were fully conscious, we would be aware of our body and these other memories. See, that's the way it works. So the reason why it's not easy to regenerate spontaneously is because the body forgets to be itself. And this is why people seek yoga to become enlightened, to remember themselves, but in a more robust manner than mere regeneration of the body. But when you're born sickly like me, regeneration sounds like a good idea. How else am I going to change a congenital defect except by way of regeneration? See, there's a reason for everything that I do. So I spend a lot of time doing it before I move on to the next topic. I usually spend a few years. Where was I? So what I discovered in learning about Becker's protocol is that the body forgets to be itself, and the only way to remind it is to provide a small controlled amount of injury, enough to give it some flexibility to take a different pathway, to try to induce the fork in the road, because the body has forgotten its prior state of the injured area, and so it's long since forgotten there was a branch in the road that forked and it went down a different path, the path of injury, and so it doesn't go back to correct it because it forgot that it ever crossed that path. So the objective of injury, controlled injury, is to remind the body to go back to that junction in the fork in the road that happened way back in the past and revisit it over and over again until the body wakes up and says, aha, I have a duty. And the duty is to go into the DNA and look there and see, oh my God, there's a difference there by comparison to what the body is. Oh my God, how could I have overlooked this? And that's painful. That's painful because now that area of the body is waking up. And so whether the pain comes first or whether the regeneration comes first, it doesn't matter because the two go hand in hand. One follows after the other like the night follows after the day and the day follows after the night in a continuing cycle of alternating between the two. It's the same way. Injury, or pain I should say, pain and regeneration go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. You don't have to call it pain. You can call it discomfort. You can call it annoying. Whatever you want to call it, it'll be something that will be unsettling. And so I'm trying to do it in a manner that I can live with, that's tolerable, not in a way that's not tolerable. So it may take a while for me, especially me in my weakened condition, all my different problems. It'll take even longer. I don't have a whole lot of stem cells swimming around in my body, so it's going to take a while. But I do what I can. I make use of silver and, iodine and vitamins and whatnot. So I do what I can. But this is something now that I can do that's doable, convenient, cost-effective, not at all complicated, Get an extra eyedropper bottle, Get distilled water, How hard is that, It's really not that difficult. But who would think? So that's the purpose of this video, so that you can learn from my experience and do it if you like and grow on that, develop it further or not do it, avoid it, your choice. But at least you cannot say you have not been warned that there are options, and that's what knowledge and technology is supposed to do. It's supposed to give us options, choices, so that we don't have to just do one choice, go to the doctor and do whatever he says. We can have alternatives to choose from. It's the whole point of alternative medicine. choices. But you have to have knowledge to do that, and you have to be interested in looking up and doing your homework, being an informed consumer, and do your homework. Let's see. So that's the two reasons why I do it. One that's a long term, that I really don't know whether or not it'll result in any kind of regeneration of the foreskin. And the other is immediate, and I know it's doing me some good in a small way to help correct my pricklish condition of mind as seen by other people. And I do have to take other people's point of view into account, because the teacher always takes on the karma of the student. And when you're different, even though you're not trying to be a teacher, just by being different and unique, you're automatically a teacher. That makes you a teacher, just by being unique. Because that's basically what teachers are. They've got the knowledge and the students don't. So it's the same thing. And so you take on the karma of other people. Even though you don't want to, you don't think you deserve to, you will anyway. And it's no different than a relationship. You know, you're in a spousal or partner relationship, you swap and share karma. You swap germs. Why wouldn't you swap karma as well? And if you're swapping karma, you're sharing consciousness. Because for all practical purposes, as Charlie Lutz would love to say, karma and consciousness are one and the same for all practical purposes. Because so long as you're in the body, you know, your consciousness is tied to your karma, and your karma is tied to your consciousness. So you really can't separate the two. Anywho, I think I've covered everything. So I didn't have to show you my penis. I didn't have to show you anything that YouTube administrators would say, and then go yank my channel while after yanking my videos. So I have to try to keep it decent, but I do like to talk about the topic on occasion, because once in a while I will learn something. You know, I spend most of the time on free energy and my health. You know, what latest supplement am I taking? You know, I'll tell you what my latest supplement is, and I'm very proud of it. I never would have done this had it was very hard for me to cross this boundary, because I'm such an idealist, you know. But I had to do this because, and I had to be a woman on YouTube to bring this to, no, was it YouTube? Well, she sent me an email through my website, you know, vinyasi.info. I have a contact form. And she got me to thinking that it really stands to reason that it would be a good idea to strengthen digestion, because here I am eating food-grade diatomaceous earth for the purposes of wiping out parasites in the gut, but I know I'm not going to be able to wipe out parasites in the rest of the body using that technique, because I don't have enough gastric acidity to dissolve the silica into siliceous acid, orthosilic acid, which is a hydrated version of silica. The silica is able to molecularly combine with water molecules and become dissolved, or a suspension. It's actually a suspension of silicon dioxide. It's not dissolved really. Well, they say it is, but in any case, it's not easy to dissolve silica. I think you have to use either hydrochloric acid or sulfuric acid, and of course the stomach does produce hydrochloric acid if you're healthy, but I'm not, and so I don't produce a whole lot. So I thought to myself, you know what, it's not enough to take a vegan version of a digestive pill. I'm going to have to get the heavy-duty variety that has betaine hydrochloride and ox bile, and it has something else from an animal, from a cow. I forget what it is. It's something I'm not familiar with. Any case, I broke down and got something non-vegetarian, because I want to be able to dissolve silica in my gut so that the silica can go throughout my body and kill off parasites, because I know what parasites have done to me. That's another health problem I have. On top of everything else, the parasites I gave myself, mildly just by taking a cat into my life at the age of 8, but very severely when I went to Hawaii and didn't sterilize the water in any way, shape, or form, thinking my raw food, 100% raw food vegan diet will protect me. Well, it's true. I never got sick, but I inoculated myself with so many parasites due to the fact that I was ignorant that I was doing so. If I had eaten even the slightest amount of cooked food, I would get sick, and that happened one time, so I went straight back to raw food. But I was the consequence, though, the flip side, is you make yourself ignorant that you're inoculating yourself with parasites. And I ran across somebody on the internet who had the same complaint. He was totally raw, and he didn't realize what he was doing to himself, and now he has to live with that mistake. And so do I, because parasites eat away and destroy the tissue system, and they'll eat away at your heart, your liver, your muscles, your brain. So I lost a lot of brain tissue due to parasites eating away at it for decades. All because I severely inoculated myself. So I would like to get rid of the cause, and I would like to regenerate if possible. So I work on those two areas if I can. Well, I didn't know how to get rid of parasites in the body. That's very difficult unless you use a very strong psychotropic medication, because very often psychotropic medication also doubles as anti-parasite medication, because parasites do create mental illness. Have been known to. It's statistically back to the 1953. There are statistics in the medical literature, in medical libraries, alluding to that statistical correlation between parasite infestation and mental illness. So I know that's one cause of mental illness, are parasites. And I was diagnosed at the time that I was inoculated, so duh. I was diagnosed to begin my mental illness at the time that I had inoculated myself, but it was like several years later, but still. But of course, the guy who said I was this, that, and the other thing will probably never admit that it was parasites or not care, because he probably doesn't think regeneration of the brain tissue is possible. But I know it is, because Diapulse, you can get if you have Medicare Part B, you can pay for Diapulse to treat your spinal cord injury should you have come into that, which made you possibly quadriplegic. You can actually regenerate your spinal cord and get up out of your wheelchair eventually and walk. Doesn't mean it'll be painless, but it can be done with high-frequency magnetic pulses at around, I think it's 1,000 times per second. They pulse you. If you have Medicare Part B, or if you have a lot of money to spend and throw away on treatments, you can regenerate the spinal cord. I don't try to help people by and large with that knowledge. I think I have a video I already put up on one of my channels specifically addressing that, but I don't like to repeat it when I see people who were born crippled, because I don't, it's not necessary to try to fix all the problems of the world, I just try to fix my own problems and then share what I've done. And since I wasn't born with spinal cord problems, I don't go there. But I do have other problems that do need regeneration. I'm not sure how to go about that, I take silver, I take cayenne, but what more can I do, Well, here's something more. I can burn my urethral opening with a very dilute 20 part per million solution of iodine in a water base, nascent iodine. Nascent, by the way, is spelled Nascent. Nancy, Apple, Samuel, Charlie, Edward, Nancy, Thomas. Nascent. It means it's highly active. It's highly active. It'll sterilize, and it shifts consciousness of this at the cellular level. It shifts the consciousness of the unconscious area of the physiology to become more awakened. And I think that's the real reason why it's been drummed out of commercial existence, because people don't want to wake up, or the corporate mindset does not want us to wake up. It's not good for business if we're too awake and aware of what's going on around us. Us Americans, we got to be a little dumb, we got to be a little dim, we got to be a little sleepwalking zombies, or else the commercial vested interests won't be able to make a lot of money off of us. So they have to dumb us down. Anywho. Okay, so I think I've said enough, and the video is still rolling, but the battery is getting dim. Fortunately, I recharged this before sometimes I forget. But this video is worth posting. A lot of times I record videos, I don't bother posting them because it's just not necessary. I'm just spinning a lot of hot air coming out of my lungs. But this is something I need to share with you, so I'm going to post this one. On my foreskin regeneration or foreskin regeneration channel on YouTube. That's the name of the channel, Foreskin Regeneration. It has a picture of a guy with a band-aid across his pelvic region, so we don't have to be indecent. No need to go there anymore. Just talk about it. But I've given you a lot of information, so you should be able to do it on your own, the same way I do it, without getting terrible results. Just, mildly painful, in case you want to go there, in case you want to do that. Now, I would imagine if you have a foreskin, you could still do it. You could pull back the foreskin and paint the entire head of the penis, the urethral opening, and the shaft that is the underside of the foreskin. In other words, all the way up to the, what do they call it? The ridge at the tip of the foreskin where there's a muscle and, of course, increased nerves, but it's a band. I forget what it's called. Anyway, all of the area that's the underside of the foreskin, including the head of the penis, I would imagine so, because you have the added benefit that when you roll that your foreskin back over that area, it will be enclosed, it'll remain wet, and will flush itself because you've got your two secretion ducts on either side of the frenulum that are constantly secreting fluid. So you've got an advantage over the rest of us who are circumcised in that you could do this protocol and get even better results than I can, because the head of your penis will never dry out if you have full coverage when limp, or even better yet, if you have full coverage when erect. I should be so lucky that I regrow a foreskin to be able to do that. That's the goal, somehow or another, to come up with a efficient, consumer-based protocol that is safe, convenient, cost-effective, and tolerable when it comes to pain, or the safety issue of the hazard of self-injury. That's an issue. I'm not going to take a scalpel to my penis, as Dr. Robert Becker did to his frogs and lab rats, amputating their limbs and totally regenerating the limb. I mean, that's how good he was. He could turn regeneration on and off at will. He was that good at it. Well, I don't have his expertise. I just have the knowledge he shared with us in his book. And I'm not a orthopedic surgeon or a surgeon of any kind, so I have to be much more careful and cautious. Yet I'm still desirous. Now, he never did regeneration of penises, so or foreskins, so we don't know how he would approach the matter. But just thinking about it, there was a guy who nearly bled to death because he played with himself using his vacuum. Not the stand-up vacuum, but the tank variety of vacuum, when you have a hose and a long pipe, and then you have attachments on the end of that pipe. Well, he took the attachment off, thinking he could use the end of the pipe as a masturbating tool because he didn't want to bother buying a pump. And he turned on the vacuum, and unfortunately, the tip of that pipe is steel, and it's sharp, and it sliced into his penis while he was masturbating with that contraption, and he nearly bled to death. So, yeah, when the penis is erect and you have a cut there, you could bleed to death if it's a large size capillary or artery or vein. That could be a danger and a risk. So I'm very aware of the risks, so I'm very cautious, like, what can I do under the circumstance? The penis is not an easy area to apply Dr. Becker's protocol to, but theoretically you should be able to apply his protocol to any part of the physiology, inside, outside, doesn't matter where. Just how do you go about it? I was always certain it was a technical matter, a technical problem to be solved somehow. Maybe this is how. That one video I got from an embryology website in Switzerland, it had a .ch, it's a .ch website in Switzerland, and they have a video of the fetal development during the third trimester of the urethral pathway, and along with the urethral opening and the foreskin of a fetus. and it's a short animation. You can go to my webpage at, the shortcut is tinyurl.com/Becker-info. BECKER-INFO. Now, if you do Becker-patent, like patent, like an invention, patent, you will get, that's a shortcut to his patent on regeneration, which is also good to read. He's also written a few scientific articles in various journals, but he also has his book, and then he has a few other books that he wrote too. Cross Currents, I think, is another one. But I like the Body Electric. That's my favorite. That's my Bible. To the extent that it can help me, since I'm not a surgeon. What else? Oh, so on that webpage, tinyurl.com/Becker-info, way down, it's a big, huge, long page. It's got chock full of things, all kinds of stuff. On there is a section having to do with the embryology of a fetus, and it has links to this little video. I did a scaled up version because the one I downloaded was small. I enlarged it, and so I host it on my website, and then I have links to the original location on the internet where I took it from, if it's still there, and I believe it is. So you can watch the video and see how the foreskin develops. It's fascinating, and that's how we have to regenerate it, the same way we grew it in the first place when we were a fetus. That's how we have to regenerate it, not tugging on the skin, not thinking that it's going to come out of the scar line, because that's not the way it grew. It didn't come out of the scar line below the corona. It's instead, it came out of the tip of the penis, the same time the urethra was tunneling. The gap that became the underside of the foreskin was becoming more deeply entrenched. So the body was digging its way underneath what would become the foreskin to create that flap of skin. It didn't grow out of the sides of the penis at below the corona. It didn't go that way. So we've had a totally wrong presumption about how to go about growing a foreskin. It's not the way the body does it, so why are we doing it differently? We're working against nature. Don't you think we should work with nature instead of against nature? It's not our nature to do it the way we're doing it conventionally. We should be growing it out of the tip of our penis, not anywhere else. So that's why I do what I do, because I think it will work, and it's already doing something else for me, so what the hell? I'm not losing anything by trying it out, since I'm already doing it for a different purpose, so maybe I'll grow a foreskin, who knows? Remains to be seen. So, because when you think about it, if you burn the head of the penis, you're keratinizing the head of the penis to an even greater degree than it has been done already. So much so that you get a dead layer of skin that falls off. So wouldn't you know it? Wouldn't it be interesting if the head of my penis turned into normal skin? And then that would be an indication, if it would move in that direction, that I'm growing a foreskin at my urethral opening. There's one digging in somewhere not too deep, but a little bit deep inside my urethral opening. Let's say it's a centimeter in, because that's what I'm guessing is about the depth. A foreskin should be digging its way in. The trench underneath the foreskin flap will be digging itself in to form a new penis head. And for that matter, widen the urethral opening. So that's the first. If I see that the urethral opening widens, then I know I'm going to be growing a foreskin. Because that's the other problem. When you get your penis tightly circumcised, then what happens, not only does the head of the penis dry up and the nerve endings underneath the head of the penis retract, and you lose a lot of nerves from the foreskin that was removed, also what happens is that the meatus, which is what I like to call the urethral opening, meatus is spelled M-E-A-T-U-S. So it's kind of meat us. meetups, meetup. Well, this is meet us. Meatus, it's Latin. I think I'm pronouncing it right. That's the urethral opening, and it flanges, kind of like bell bottoms. If you know the 70s, the bell bottom pants, it flanges like the flange of a funnel. It flanges outward, and some guys have a really wide flange, so much so it looks like their penis is split down the middle across its tip vertically. It's really bizarre from my standpoint, because my penis doesn't do that. If anything, what happens when a foreskin is removed, the meatus closes down, and so I can see what's happened. It's so obvious, because there is a scar line where it used to be opened up a little bit more. It's a one-way scar line. I don't have it in both directions, and it's in the direction of where the frenulum used to be. So I know that I've had other problems with my penis closing down. When I was about 5, they had ram a metal shaft, a steel rod, up my urethral opening to open it back up again, because I was really stuck shut. I don't know what happened. I had all kinds of health problems when I was a kid, and oh my God, that was so painful. But they had to reopen me the hard way, and oh my God, that was a nightmare in itself. But not being able to pee was a nightmare too, and having a full bladder, that was an emergency. Talk about an emergency, a medical emergency. You got a full bladder, and how are you going to pee, We can chop off your penis, but short of that, that would have been the alternative. If they had not succeeded in the first attempt, method, protocol, they would have had to cut off my penis. When you think about it, maybe they would have reattached, or maybe not, Anywho, so this is a problem. So I don't want to do the treatment so severe that it clams shut, because that's obviously too severe. You always have to take 2 steps backwards if you want to go 1 step forward, or something like that. 1 step backwards for 2 steps forward. Yeah, more likely. Yeah, not the first, the other way. But you want to do it in such a way that it's tolerable. So I don't want to do damage to the skin such that it clams shut on me. Yet on the other hand, it should be slightly painful, because that's the only way I know I'm stimulating that area adequately enough for the body to wake up and take notice. Because that's what that area of the body is subconscious. It's asleep in its self-indulgent new memory that's not the original memory that I had at birth, namely the foreskin. It has forgotten the foreskin. So I have to remind it to wake by way of waking it up. And once it's sufficiently awakened, it will remember, theoretically, that there's some discrepancy between what's there and what's written in the DNA, what should be there. And then it'll correct it. But that remains to be seen if I succeed to get to that point. But here at least I have a protocol that works. So far, so good. So I'm hopeful, and that's why I thought I should do this video, to give you a little update. I'm beginning my daily program now that I got over the initial mistake, and I'm learning I don't have to masturbate to apply it, because I don't have to rub it across the entire head of the penis. All I have to do is put it in the urethral opening. That's all I have to do. And even if I apply it across the head of the penis, I don't have to rub it in, But frankly, my dear, I'm not sure I have to apply it to the whole penis. If I do that, I'm not sure how I'll do it. I guess the only way to do it is to put a few drops in the palm of one hand and then rub it around the head of the penis. Not spend too much time doing it, because it's going to sting slightly, but it doesn't have to be rubbed in, just moistened and then allowed to air dry. That's probably how I'll do it. I may try that tomorrow. I'll see. I'll let you know if I feel like it, what came of it, if anything. But I'm telling you now, so I don't have to go to the trouble, because I don't like to. I'd rather be working on my free energy, devices and presentations, my simulations. I don't want to dwell on this too much, because I have all these health protocols. They get me through the day, and I just do them, and I don't want to think about them. I want to get on to other things. Trust me, a lot of life is a lot more interesting than dwelling on the body. Oh, but I will give you this. I had this intuition and I ordered it and I'm waiting for it to arrive. It's lycopene. I believe that's how it's pronounced. Lycopene. And it's a extract from tomatoes, of all things. It's the dye, or the pigment, the natural plant pigment, that gives tomatoes its red color, which is a different pigment than the pigment that's in beets, so it's not the same. Lycopene is good for the eyes, and my eyes are not so good. So I'm taking all this vitamin A, and I thought, this is a good idea. Well, I had the intuition there's something else that lycopene is good for. And the intuition, I'll quote it exactly, word for word. X marks the spot. In other words, the interpretation of that is, I may be able to attract attention to myself a little better than I have been doing, because I don't really include tomatoes in my diet. I mean, I have a small amount in the canned chili, vegan, Amy brand, vegan black bean variety of organic refried beans. Actually, it's not chili, it's refried beans. Vegan refried beans. And I love it. I get it by the case. I think it's 1 or 2 dozen. I love this stuff. It's $4 when you get it through Amazon. No, it's $4 and change if you buy it in the store, but it's less than $4 if you get it on Amazon. And if you have Prime shipping, you don't have to pay for shipping except once a year for all your shopping at Amazon. So it's a good deal. So that has a little tomato in it, but that's it. That's the only tomato in my... Because, I don't handle the acidity of tomatoes very well. When I was younger, it was different, but now I'm very sensitive, so I really can't tolerate tomato sauce very well. I used to love tomato sauce on potatoes, baked potatoes, on broccoli. Oh, I loved tomato sauce. Anyway, and there's so many organic varieties of tomato sauce, you don't have to use GMO tomatoes. Be that as it may. So I haven't been getting tomatoes in my diet, and this came up, and it's a little pricey at around $20 a bottle, these little capsules, these vegetarian capsules, but I thought, you know what, I had the money at the beginning of the month, I spent it on this, so I'm waiting for it to arrive, because it's taking a little while, and it might help me attract more attention to myself, hopefully, mostly in a good way, so that people can take notice of what I'm doing, because I'm going to a lot of trouble producing these free energy presentations, and I'm getting a few sales, but not too many. I'd like to get a few more, and spread it around like manure and fertilize everyone's brains. Anywho, I've said enough. I've covered a lot of ground, and I hope you the best of health, and I wish you well.